This video is going to be a complete guide to understanding and managing your diabetes and your blood sugar problems. The references for this information is from this. It's the Guyton's Textbook of Medical Physiology. The reason I'm doing a complete guide is because there is so much confusion in regard to diet as to which diet you should choose. Very often a person has high blood sugar, or they're trying to lose weight, or they have insulin resistance, and someone says, do keto, do carnivore, do vegan, do Mediterranean. And people have no understanding of the science behind the diet as it relates to the diabetes or the weight management or the insulin resistance. So this video is going to be extremely complete. I'm going to try to make it easy to understand, but this is not to be argued with. These are just the facts. I'm just presenting you with the facts of physiology, and we're going to cover that first so you have a good understanding. Now I realize that I'll put some time marks on this, so if you just want to fast forward to the diet that you want to follow, you're more than welcome to do it. But again, if you don't have an understanding of what you're really trying to accomplish and why it actually works, then very often you'll just follow whoever has the best abs or the most influence on YouTube or who has the most subscribers. So I'm hoping to give you some great information in this video so that you will truly know what you're up against. The pancreas is an organ right in our abdomen, right underneath our rib cage. And there are two functions of the pancreas. It's an exocrine gland and an endocrine gland. Now, an exocrine gland secretes chemicals locally for digestion. 99% of the function of the pancreas is for the exocrine gland function. Only 1% of the function of your pancreas is for the endocrine function, which is what we are primarily talking about here. Inside the pancreas, there is a conglomeration of cells that is called the islets of Langerhans. And there is an A cell, a B cell, and you guessed it. No, you guessed it wrong. It's a D cell. This stands for alpha, beta, and delta cells. The alpha cells secrete glucagon, which I'll explain in just a moment. The B cells secrete insulin, which is what most people think of when they think of a pancreas. And the delta cells secrete somatostatin. All three of these are hormones that are necessary to regulate blood glucose levels. Glucagon that comes from the A cells will increase your blood sugar when necessary, and the insulin from the B cells will decrease your blood sugar when necessary. Somatostatin is another hormone that regulates and inhibits the balance between the two. You eat a meal, and let's just assume that you're eating something that has carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. The B cells have glucose receptors, and they are going to notice more glucose in the blood. Thus, the cells are then going to secrete insulin. This circulates throughout the bloodstream. Insulin is going to help transport the glucose into the muscle, the liver, as well as fat cells. So the insulin and the glucose is circulating through your blood, and there are insulin receptors on the areas of the cells of your muscles, your heart, your skeletal muscles, and the liver. The insulin then will facilitate the entry of glucose into those tissues, and now the blood sugar starts to go down. Now here's something very important, and when we get into the area of the diet, understanding this is extremely important. When there's insulin in the blood, it will allow the glucose to enter fat cells because there's insulin receptors on fat cells. Each glucose will then be converted into two molecules of glycerol that, when combined with fatty acids, forms our triglycerides. And when there's insulin in the blood, it will inhibit hormone-sensitive lipase. What hormone-sensitive lipase does is it inhibits the breakdown of fatty tissue. So in other words, if insulin is high in our blood, then you're going to be inhibiting the use of fat for energy. Stick around in just a moment because we're going to cover how to use fat as an energy source. So under normal circumstances, normal physiology, once the insulin has done its job to get the glucose into all the cells, the muscles now using glucose, the skeletal muscles have now taken those glucose molecules and they're using them for energy or storing them as glycogen. The liver is nice and full with glycogen, and any excess has now been put into fat cells. Now the insulin starts to go down because there's a negative feedback loop where the B cells in the islets of Langerhans now recognize that there's lower blood sugar and the pancreas stops secreting insulin. Now let's talk about the alpha cells of the islets of Langerhans and what they do. They create glucagon, and glucagon is stimulated by these cells in the situation where the blood sugar starts to go down. Now what glucagon is going to do is it's going to go to the liver and take glycogen out of the liver and break it down through a whole bunch of different processes to get glucose into the blood. There's another process called gluconeogenesis where it'll not only just take it from glycogen, but it'll take protein out of the liver and convert it into new glucose molecules. This happens during of times in between meals as well as times when food is scarce. So the body wants to use glucose. That's its preferable food. So during times when we don't eat, the alpha cells will secrete glucagon to go and create glucose. So our blood sugar throughout the day will have a very minimal up and down style. The blood sugar should not go way up and the blood sugar should not drop tremendously. It should stay relative within a certain range, and that's the purpose of insulin and glucagon. Now let's use an extreme example called type 1 diabetes to further understand exactly what happens when things go wrong. In the absence of insulin, with a disease like type 1 diabetes where the pancreas is simply not producing any insulin, so the B cells of the islets of Langerhans are not functioning, what happens? Well, insulin deficient people have higher blood sugar levels because when they eat foods and the blood sugar gets into their bloodstream, sometimes at rest they can have twice as much blood sugar, and after a meal it can be as much as 4 times as much blood sugar as there is normal. Because the body does not produce any insulin, then the insulin receptors on the muscles of the heart and the skeletal muscles and the fat cells, the receptors have no insulin, and thus the blood sugar, the glucose, cannot get into those cells. So the more the person eats, the higher the blood sugar goes, and it takes even longer to reduce the blood sugar. So in this particular case, the heart, the skeletal muscles, and the fat cells are deprived of energy. Thus, they have to look for alternative ways to get their energy. So a fascinating thing happens. The body starts to oxidize the fat and the protein within the cells, within the liver, within the fat cells, and within the muscle cells, including the heart. This is why a person with type 1 diabetes will start to lose weight. They will become weak. They will become lethargic. If a baby has type 1 diabetes, they just won't thrive. They won't grow. They become malnourished. This is why diabetes is called the starvation amongst the plenty, because no matter how much blood sugar the person has, they literally are starving to death. Now, this mobilization of fat and protein starts to become the only way the body can survive. And with the breakdown of fat, your body starts to produce ketone bodies or keto acids. This happens particularly in the liver, and this is called ketosis or ketoacidosis. Now, from a medical textbook point of view, Ketosis and ketoacidosis are not considered healthy things. This is considered a life-threatening situation where a person is literally starving to death. Don't confuse this with a keto diet, but understand that if your body is forming ketones and also going into ketoacidosis, there's a reason why your doctor is probably going to be concerned, because they looked at it from the medical point of view, the medical physiology point of view, and it's not considered a normal situation. Lastly, with such high blood sugar in the kidney, where your kidney is functioning to try to clean out the blood, there's such high concentrations of sugar, the glucose, sugar, is literally spilling into the urine. This is why they do a urine test. When you're spilling sugar into your urine, a couple things happen. Number one, the osmotic pressure of the blood changes, and now you become extremely thirsty. Decreased plasma volume stimulates areas inside your brainstem, the thirst centers, to actually try to make you drink more. Then, because your body is trying to get rid of these ketones as well as get rid of the blood sugar, now you are really thirsty, trying to constantly drink, but you're becoming dehydrated because you're urinating so much. Now, I understand talking about type 1 diabetes is an extreme example, because most of the people that are watching this video are going to be type 2 diabetics, they're insulin resistant, they're overweight, and they're trying to lower their blood pressure and lower their cholesterol all at the same time. But it's important to understand the function of these organs and how they work, because now we're going to discuss the diet and how it affects type 2 diabetes and getting your blood sugar to a normal level. So let's get into the nitty-gritty about the diets. I'm going to cover 7 different popular diets that you can follow or try that would help reduce all these problems that are existing. Now, one of the things about these diets is, just to let you know, they're more similar than they are different, even though there's going to be infighting. This group thinks this group is crazy and stuff, so just bear with me. I'm going to go through each diet, the pros and cons, and possibly what you would want to do. Now, all these diets promise literally the same thing, that they're going to lower your blood sugar, they're going to help you lose weight, they're going to give you more clarity, longer life, all these things. And the truth is, how can they all be right if they're diametrically opposed? In other words, some are more animal-based, some are more plant-based. How can they all be right? But there is probably one diet that's right for you. So there is no one diet that's right, even though a lot of these YouTubers are saying, this is the only diet you should follow. It's the human diet. It's what our ancestors used. Nobody really knows that. So the first diet we're going to talk about is the keto diet, which is very popular with Eric Berg and Ken Berry. I know you guys watch these videos because I can go on my channel and see what my subscribers are also watching. And these are the YouTubers that you're following. They have great stories. They were once at least Ken Berry was clinically obese or morbidly obese or something like that. He tried every diet and he went on the keto diet, and you should do your research and it's the only human diet and yada, yada, yada. And it works for him, and that's awesome. The reason the keto diet works so well is because now that you understand the physiology of how insulin works and how glucose is absorbed in the cells and they need insulin receptors and all these things. When you eat a keto diet, which consists of literally 70% of your diet consists of fats. Now, whether it's good fats or bad fats, it doesn't matter. Fats don't stimulate your body to produce insulin. That's what the reason it works. 20% of the diet consists of protein, and only 10% of the diet consists of carbohydrates. So if you go from a standard American diet and you suddenly go keto, you are radically going to change how your body uses energy, and you're probably for a period of time going to go into ketosis. The way sometimes people would want to measure ketosis is by using a a mouth stick or something to measure the acetone that is coming off your disgusting breath when you go keto. And that's some people say that's a problem, some people say it's great that it's happening, but remember, ketoacidosis is not a healthy physiological condition according to the medical physiology textbooks. However, when you're morbidly obese or clinically obese, that is another problem altogether. So if you were to just stop eating so much protein and stop eating carbohydrates, your body doesn't have to produce as much insulin, and thus your body starts secreting glucagon, which helps breaking down some of the fat tissue to break down into energy. So your body starts using ketones as an energy source, as well as turning fats into glucose so that your blood sugar will be in the normal range. As your body starts to heal, those insulin receptors become more sensitive to insulin, and in theory, you can go back to a more balanced diet after a certain period of time. Some people want to stay on keto forever. One of the disadvantages of keto, and this is kind of a real problem, is that while drastically limiting your carbohydrate intake and eating 70% of your diet as fats, so you're eating bacon, you're eating butter, you're eating olives, olive oil, you're eating tons of avocados, MCT oil. The big issue, and the reason why doctors have a hard time with this, despite the weight loss, is that the keto diet for a lot of people raises their LDL cholesterol, their low density lipoproteins. And LDL has been associated strongly with a high cardiovascular risk. So doctors have a hard time with this because sure, you've lost weight and that in theory helps your cardiovascular risk, but what they're seeing on the blood test is these LDLs. So the keto community, and I hate calling it a community, it's not a community, it's just a way that you eat. But the keto community has a definite PR problem, because if you were to lose a lot of weight and your blood sugar went down and your A1C went down and all your other markers went down, there would be no denying that the keto diet is the best diet. But the problem is at the LDL. So how does the community deal with this? They say that, well, LDLs don't matter, and the research and all the other research was conspiracy theory against the sugar with the sugar industry and stuff. And it's just hard. Sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow, but understand that if you do the keto diet, the reason it works is because you're simply not putting enough carbohydrates in your body stops producing so much insulin, and your body can recover, especially if you have insulin resistance. Let's discuss the vegan diet. Now, the vegan diet makes the same promises that every other diet makes, that it's going to lower your cholesterol, it's going to lower your body fat, it's going to help you with insulin resistance, it's going to help you lose weight and all these different things. Well, how can that be when we just talked about the keto diet and that actually works? Why does the vegan diet work? Well, it does work to a certain degree depending on how you deal with the vegan diet. Keep in mind that Pepsi and Coca-Cola, because they're made from corn syrup, corn's a vegetable, high fructose corn syrup, it's actually vegan to drink those things. You can be eating pastas and cakes and all these different things if it's made vegan, and that's not really a healthy vegan way. A better solution would be to eat primarily vegetables. And if you're a vegan and you're eating a lot of vegetables and you find that you're losing weight and your blood sugar is normalizing, you're having all these health benefits, the reason this occurs is because the vegan diet, if done properly, is actually a very, very healthy diet because you're primarily eating fruits and vegetables and non-animal products. So you're reducing the amount of arachidonic acid in animal products, you're reducing the amount of saturated fats, so your cholesterol goes way down. And when you're eating vegetables and fruits, these are primarily carbohydrates. A proper vegan diet is probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 90% carbohydrates. Now, if you've understood the physiology section, you'll sit there and go, well, that doesn't make sense. If you're eating all carbohydrates, then how is the blood sugar normalizing? Here's how. Because the average person, when they think of carbohydrates, they think of pastas and bread and cakes and cookies and donuts. They think those are carbohydrates. Those do have a lot of carbohydrates, but vegetables are pretty much all carbohydrates for the most part. Fruit is pretty much all carbohydrate. The reason it works to lower your blood sugar is primarily because while they are primarily carbohydrate, there's a tremendous amount of fiber, number one. And when you have so much fiber, it slows down the absorption of the sugars, the breakdown of the sugars. And thus the pancreas doesn't have to secrete as much insulin. This is where you hear of what's called low glycemic index. It's almost like an IV drip of blood glucose, so your pancreas doesn't have to freak out. In addition to that, many people that eat a proper vegan diet simply cannot eat enough calories. And one of the things that I did not mention in the physiology section that's going to come out right now is that your pancreas will secrete insulin when you eat a tremendous amount of calories as well. So even if you're eating a high protein, high fat diet, if you eat a tremendous amount of calories, like 2,000 calories in one meal at one sitting, your pancreas will secrete insulin. So the vegan diet actually is able to maintain blood sugar because of the amount of calories that are put in and the amount of fiber. Now, what are the problems with the vegan diet? Well, besides being really annoying, just kidding, I was joking, keep it calm. The problem with the vegan diet is it's very, very restrictive. And we'll find out with other diets as well that one of the problems is if you're trying to get all your nutrients from one source, then you're going to become deficient in things. And this is why a lot of vegans have to take supplements, for example, B12 supplements, because B12 is primarily found in animal products, and if you're not eating any animal products whatsoever, you're going to be limited. Likewise, we'll find out here in a carnivore diet, if you're just eating steak, to think that you're getting every nutrient that you need just by limiting yourself to one food, it can be very restrictive. About 10 years ago, I had a lot of patients that were doing intermittent fasting. They'd come in and they said, hey, I've lost about 30 pounds on this intermittent fasting. And I would say, well, what exactly are you doing? And they say, well, I just skip breakfast. And then I just eat lunch and dinner. And I just don't eat breakfast. And so I'm intermittent fasting. And I think to myself, well, that's not called fasting, that's called skipping breakfast. But they would say that because they skipped breakfast, they were losing weight. And there's a physiological reason why. This is the reason why. Because when you don't eat breakfast, you are now not secreting insulin, and your body is secreting glucagon to mobilize fat cells and break them down into energy, which is the glucose, gluconeogenesis. So by giving yourself a break, fasting actually does work. The longer you can fast, the more time you're giving yourself a break. If you're a person who, from the moment you wake up in the morning to the moment you go to bed, you're always eating something, particularly if it's bad food, your body is always secreting insulin constantly throughout the day, and there's no break. It'd be like driving a car really fast and running it really hard all day long. It's going to break down. So by just fasting or just skipping a meal, you are allowing your body to have a rest, a physiological rest from secreting insulin, and allowing the A cells of the islets of Langerhans to secrete glucagon. And that's the reason why fasting works. The longer you can fast, the better. What is the problem with fasting? Here's the problem. And Peter Attia has made a very strong argument for this in his own life. He's another medical doctor, YouTuber that seems to be popular right now. He just wrote a book on longevity. And he said that one of the problems with fasting is when your body fasts and it starts to produce glucagon to break down fat cells. If you fast for too long, you're not only going to break down the glycogen in the liver, but you're going to break down the glycogen in the muscle. And then eventually your body is going to want to start to break down not just the fat and not just the glycogen, but the muscle. And so one of the disadvantages of fasting is you tend to lose muscle mass. And so when choosing a diet, for example, someone like me, I can't afford to lose any muscle mass. I don't really weigh anything to begin with. So if I do a long time of fasting, I'm not only going to lose fat and create autophagy, but I'm going to lose muscle, which is not ideal for at least someone like me. But for you, it may not be a bad idea, because if you can lose more fat than you can muscle, then in the long run, that might be a benefit for your health. Carnivore diet, and the person who probably made this really famous is a medical doctor called Shawn Baker. There's also other YouTubers, Dr. Avadia, and so they feel as though really the only thing that you should be eating is red meat. They've gone so far, the carnivore community, you know how I feel about that word, but the carnivore community says that you really should not be eating vegetables, that vegetables are bad for you, that vegetables have toxins in them, that's the reason the toxins are there is to prevent humans from eating them, and that they cause all sorts of problems. And the carnivore diet, which seems to be really popular now, at least with my patients, a lot of people have just kind of quit the keto diet because, I mean, how much bacon and avocado can you possibly eat? That high fat program, it gets old and it's hard to maintain, but people love steak. So if you can eat just red meat or animal products or animal organs like liver, then you're definitely going to lose weight. And there's a reason why. It comes down to physiology, guys. If you're eating nothing but steak or fatty steak like a ribeye, your diet consists mainly of protein and fat. There's literally no carbohydrate whatsoever in a big juicy steak if you just put salt and pepper on it. And your body is going to go into a state of ketosis, your pancreas is going to secrete glucagon, and you are going to become very lean. The nice thing about eating a carnivore diet is because you're eating so much protein that hopefully the likelihood of losing body mass in the form of skeletal muscle and heart muscle is going to be minimized. And most of the people that are following the carnivore diet, they tend to be, big dudes. And so it's a very manly type of way of eating. And there's some women that are doing it as well, but they're not as popular on YouTube unless they show their abs or their stuff, that type of thing. All right, so what is the biggest problem? The biggest problem with the carnivore diet seems to be that you're still trying to limit the amount of food that you eat and saying that you get all the nutrients. But I feel like if I limited myself to just steak and said, hey, I'm getting all my nutrients from that, that makes as much sense as saying, hey, I'm getting all my nutrients from vegetables. You can save money because you're not buying the fruits, you're not buying the vegetables, so you can afford a grass-fed, grass-finished product with animal proteins. And so that is one of the disadvantages, to think that you're getting every nutrient under the sun without eating anything else is faulty at best. And it's a PR problem for the carnivore diet. And just like the keto diet, the problem with the carnivore diet is a lot of people that go just pure carnivore, they tend to get muscle cramps and they tend to have problems. And why are they getting muscle cramps? Because you can't get enough magnesium and potassium and minerals and certain vitamins from just eating a steak. So again, you'd have to supplement it. And lastly, problem with the carnivore diet is, again, you go to your doctor and sure, you've lost weight and that's great, but your LDLs are up or your VLDLs are up, and the doctor just has a hard time understanding why a person would just eat steak and liver and that's all they eat. So how does the community solve the PR problem? It just simply says LDLs don't matter. The fifth diet is the carnivore plus fruit diet. And the reason this diet exists is because many people who are on the carnivore diet find that they're getting muscle spasms, they're getting cramps, they're having problems with just sticking to a strict carnivore diet. For example, someone who has an autoimmune disease like rheumatoid arthritis, one of the most famous two people that have been proponents of the pure carnivore diet are Mikhaila Peterson and Jordan Peterson. And these are famous people, and their history is well documented of improvement of mental health as well as physical health, and it's impressive. But the problem is not everybody has had as much success as they have, and find that fruit adds enough carbohydrates to balance out the steak, and some people feel better from it. One of the more famous people is Paul Saladino, I think is his name. He was at first a carnivore, but then realized that he just wasn't doing good on the carnivore diet. He had a hard time, and as soon as he introduced fruits into his diet, he thrived again. And this shows how individualized certain diets can be. But nonetheless, the situation is, why does the carnivore diet, and the carnivore and fruit diet in particular, solve all the problems that every other diet does in lowering our blood sugar, improving insulin resistance, we lose body fat? It's because fruit, which has fructose in it, which people freak out about because they think, oh my God, that's sugar. Don't forget, the fruit has a tremendous amount of vitamins and minerals that are healthy for us. A lot of fruit has fiber in it, and quite frankly, you just can't eat that much fruit that you're going to get fat on it. So steak and fruit, you have this balance, and you get a normal response with your insulin, and you get a normal response with glucagon. And for all these diets, people love to go extreme. So you can do keto and then mix in intermittent fasting. You can do carnivore and mix intermittent fasting. The most extreme of the intermittent fasting would be the OMAD, 1 meal a day. And in that case, just like every other diet, you are allowing your body to use more glucagon and break down fat cells. But the problem is, sometimes you could take it to an extreme. Now, the sixth diet is what I would consider, in my humble opinion, for my body, the best way to go. But it is a little bit difficult, and I'll tell you what it is. Imagine, for example, that you can have a diet where you would eat the perfect amount of protein for your body type, your body size, and your energy levels. So you're not excessively eating protein like a carnivore, but you're also not under-eating protein like a vegan. So if you can calculate how many grams of protein would be the absolute perfect amount of protein, where you're not overdoing it, but you're not underdoing it, you're satisfying the protein requirement for your body every day. In addition to that, you are allowing your body to have carbohydrates that will give you energy, but not so many carbohydrates that the remaining amount has to turn to fat, but not under eating carbohydrates that you have low energy or muscle cramps, which many people do on other diets. In addition to that, imagine you had just the right amount of fat, the good kind of fat, that will supply the necessary ingredients to create hormones in your body. You're not overeating fat, but you're not under-eating fat. This is what's called the zone diet, where you're in just the perfect zone. You've narrowed down how much protein, how many carbohydrates, and how much fat you can eat to give you the best results for your body. Unfortunately, the problem with the zone diet is if you follow it to a T, it's kind of difficult to follow, and this is why people don't want to do it. In fact, myself, I sometimes fall off the wagon because to do it perfectly is actually hard. And the developer of the Zone Diet, named Barry Sears, has probably recognized that over the years and realized that he's tried to make it even easier. It's as simple as this. You eat 5 times a day. Each meal has protein, carbohydrates, and fat. All 3 macronutrients in each meal. There is no meal that is huge. Each meal is small. The way to think about it is each meal has a protein as 1/3 of the plate, and 2/3 of the plate are vegetables sprinkled with some oil, olive oil in particular. In addition to that, you're also going to take your fish oil or eat fatty fish, the right amount of omega-3 fatty acids combined with the right amount of protein for your body, the right amount of carbohydrates, and the right amount of fats that keeps you in that zone that reduces inflammation and allows our body to produce the right amount of hormones called eicosanoids, which tailor our body to have the right amount of inflammation at the right times, but not so much that it causes heart disease. Whew. That's a lot to say, and that is the reason why the Zone Diet has not become popular, because it's too hard to follow. Even though Barry Sears says it's easy, it is easier in his later books. But also another reason why the Zone Diet is just not popular anymore is because it's just too old. It's like yesterday's news. I mean, this diet was developed 40 years ago and 30 years ago maybe, and it is people always want the new thing. A good example of the Zone Diet would be the old Jack LaLanne diet. Eat natural foods and you can't go wrong. And that's kind of what the Zone Diet is. The 7th and final diet that we're going to talk about is the Mediterranean diet. And the YouTubers that you'll very often be watching that are more promoting the Mediterranean style of dieting are Thomas Lalare or something like that, and then Dr. Mike Hansen. These are the people that are big proponents of the Mediterranean diet. And what the heck is the Mediterranean diet and why does it lower our blood sugar? The reason why is because the Mediterranean diet is primarily a vegetable and fruit diet where the protein is not the main course, but is on top of the vegetables. So instead of thinking like a Zone Diet, for example, or a Carnivore Diet or a Carnivore with Fruit, the protein is the main thing and then the vegetables or the carbohydrates or something on the side. The Mediterranean diet thinks in the exact opposite way. The vegetables are the main course and the protein is something you have on the side. The Mediterranean diet wants you to use extra virgin olive oil as your primary fat. You're going to stay away from red meats and organ meats and high saturated fats and eat primarily vegetables with the protein and a lot of olive oil. The reason this works so well is because it's such a balanced diet that your body will use insulin when it's necessary, but not excessively. You're eating primarily low glycemic index foods, which are the vegetables, occasional fruit as dessert, but you are not overeating bad food that is carbohydrate rich. You're actually eating a majority of low glycemic, healthy, nutrient-dense carbohydrates. And when that happens, for many people, your blood sugar goes down, your body fat goes down. But there's a definite problem with the Mediterranean diet, and it's twofold. Number one is that it's very confusing because they don't give us any real guidelines of how much to eat, when to eat, how to prepare the food. It's just kind of like, live your life, eat as much as you need. Well, people don't like that. People like rules. They like strict rules. Like if I did an intermittent fasting, people come in all the time into my office and go, I'm doing 16 and 8, or I'm doing 20 and 4, as if there was some magic with these numbers. People want rules to follow. People want guidelines. And the Mediterranean diet just doesn't give a whole lot of guidelines as to how much food to consume or when to consume it. And people don't like that. The second thing is that the Mediterranean diet, if you do it right, is actually quite an expensive endeavor. You don't buy your vegetables in a can, you buy fresh vegetables, organic vegetables. You get organic fruit. You get fish or protein from natural sources. The extra virgin olive oil is not the olive oil that you get in the store. You have to go out of your way to get very high quality extra virgin olive oil. In addition to that, you need to learn how to cook. And many people simply don't know how to cook. You know, if you're a carnivore, you can go to the store, buy a steak, put it in a frying pan, add some salt and pepper, and there's your steak. It's like the perfect bachelor food. But with the Mediterranean diet, it's totally the opposite. Food preparation is an art form, and this turns people off to the Mediterranean diet. So I hope you've enjoyed this complete guide to managing your blood sugar and what diets might be right for you. Let me know in the comments section if there's a particular diet that you have found to be beneficial for you, because other people may read it and find benefit from it. As a last thing, if you can, I'm doing this YouTube video series to try to help people, and the only way that people are going to see it is if you hit the bell notification or hit a like button or comment down below and share it with other people on social media. Make sure and subscribe to my channel. How YouTube works is if you watch this video, and I realize you can just watch this video for free and you didn't pay a dime for it, and I'm not asking you to pay anything, but if you just watch this video and get benefit from it, but don't give me a thumbs up or hit a like or something like that, or comment or share it, then YouTube thinks that people just don't care about the video and won't show it on the algorithm. So if you could do me a favor and just subscribe to the channel, hit the notification down there, and that would help me out a lot in helping me know that people like these videos and want to watch more of it. If you have any questions, you can certainly ask it down in the comment section. And then the other thing is, I do have a Patreon account, so if you'd like to support this channel just by giving a small donation, I do appreciate it. There's a link for the Patreon down below. And I hope this series has helped you so that you can pick which diet would work best for you, and that you can get healthy, get your blood sugar in order. But now, most importantly, you'll probably understand better why these things actually work.